All right, now I have opened up, or I've saved as a new file type. And this file type, I've really kind of aggressively saturated parts and contrasted. And now I'm going to do kind of crazy brush work to it. So let's use the same kind of brush. Let me see what this brush is doing. Oh, I don't want this one anymore. So let me go to one of the custom brushes I made, and let's check its settings. And I don't want it scattered so much anymore. So I'm going to turn scattering off. I do want wet edges. Let's try build up, see what that does. To be honest, I really have never known what that does. All right, and now I'm going to aggressively kind of draw over it, just like my aunt does when she does ceramics. She fires them all as just one color clay, but then she uses glazes and kind of paints the eyes on, paints the lips. So I'm going to do that to my portrait. On a new layer, I don't like to use black, so I'm going to steal whatever this dark color is. And it's going to look like black, but if I actually look at it on a spectrum, it has a whole lot of red in it. So it's just above black. So it's like a really dark red. I'm going to go a little bit smaller. All right. And now let's just attack it. 100% opacity. I'm going to pick some of these crazy glaze colors that she uses. And I do want this brush to be a little bit more textured, so let me see. I want it very contrasted. I can play with the depth of it. I don't think I want smoothing anymore. All right, and then needs to feel like it's going over something bumpy. I'm going to try scattering, but maybe in a different way, using both axes. I'm trying to find ways to break it up, but I think I'll do that with my brush mode. Okay, so now with this brush, which looks a little bit harder edged and bumpier, when I do these paintings, I'm going to, instead of normal mode, I'll put it on an overlay mode. So we'll kind of let that texture from underneath come through. It's not that the layer is on an overlay mode, it's that the brush itself is on an overlay mode, which is something new we haven't done. So I would draw in these features and they'll automatically overlay whatever color I choose into it. So you see, you get some interesting effects that way, especially as you cut back into it. She has a lot of broken lines in how she does it, but she always rings around the pupils and the irises. She uses pretty bright saturated colors, so I can paint in with those too. And this is a total experiment. See if I can make it kind of look like a painter, like it's one of her own portraits. These big splotches of color. See how they get more saturated as they build up. It's already getting pretty interesting. Not being afraid of contrast. These kind of flat red lips. Making every crease just very, very obvious. Now I feel like I have the safety to really experiment here because I've already done the representational portrait and saved it. And I have it kind of as a backup if this just gets too crazy. But this is fun. So the big difference here is as I'm just trying things out, not trying to match a photo, I can steal colors from anywhere, but because they're set on an overlay brush mode, they're going to blend with the colors I already have. And because it's a build-up setting on the brush, it's going to get more and more saturated as I choose to build it up and layer it with other colors. It's like you can't really erase from your brush anymore when you have build-up turned on. And I don't want to erase here. I want to be bold. Make strong decisions. Just like you can see my ant sculptures did. These really, really deep creases that she would paint in and also carve into her sculptures. But the reason they look so deep is because they have these strong highlights as well. So it's not just the dark lines. Also going to be the highlights around them. She would make her glasses, I'm sure, look very cartoony. Now, abstraction is when you can tell what something is meant to communicate, but it's done in a heavily stylized way. And there are so many different levels of abstraction. So I'm just abstracting reality in the way that Viola Fry's sculptures abstract reality. But I still want it to look like a woman, and I still want it to kind of look like her. Even though her own self-portrait, which is the reference I was using for building the painting, her own sculpture self-portrait, doesn't do all of the crazy color stuff. Because she didn't wear makeup and she didn't see herself as that kind of archetype. Whereas in art, she thought the female figure was such a mainstay of art history and the idealized figure that most of her women were always sculpted nude, like a Venus figure, and most of her men were sculpted in business suits, because she sees that in art history as kind of a mainstay as well. Now I put those highlights in the hair. Trying to make them look like more solid chunks. Goes against everything you try to do when making a portrait look believable. Softening edges. I'm like sharpening edges. These brush settings are working out really well. Actually, Build Up does this nice thing. If I make a line, I can't paint over it. I can only kind of augment its colors because I have Build Up turned on. And that's exactly like when you're painting glaze on a ceramic. You can wipe it off, but you're not going to get rid of it completely. You can only kind of adjust it with other color choices. You can thin it maybe. All right, now her coat. Really let the texture of the brushstroke show through, lighten it up quite a bit. A lot of these places. See what you can get away with. My favorite Andy Warhol quote is that art is whatever you can get away with. Remember, as students just learning techniques in digital painting, you have this opportunity that you don't often get, which is that there's no expectations on this work. You're doing it for yourself. So you owe it to yourself to really push it. See what you can learn from it, see what you can kind of get out of it. It's human nature to only try to do things we're comfortable with and that we think we'll be successful at. But in art, that just holds you back. The great strength of a digital approach is you can save all those multiple versions. So it's not like I'm painting over a painting I already finished. I'm just creating a different version.